She was just the quiet waitress with scars easy to ignore, easy to mock. But when a decorated veteran walked into that diner, he didn't see a broken woman, he saw the mark of a warrior. And in that moment, everything they thought they knew about her shattered. This isn't just a story about scars. It's about honor, sacrifice, and a truth no one expected. They didn't see her courage. They didn't see the years she gave, the pain she endured, or the lives she saved. They only saw the scars. Every morning, Kaisha tied her apron, tucked her braids under a plain cap, and walked through the doors of Melvin's Country Diner, just off Route 19 in a quiet Georgia town. The place smelled like fried bacon and spilled coffee. The kind of place where locals came every day, same booth, same coffee, same routine. To most of them, she was just that black waitress with the weird scars. They didn't ask where she came from. They didn't want to know. Kids stared. Grown men whispered. Some joked cruelly behind menus, not even bothering to lower their voices. She looks like she lost a fight with a blender. Bet she got into some gang stuff, probably drugs. But Keisha never flinched, never snapped. She simply smiled, served their coffee, and walked away. Every step was quiet, every movement practiced like someone trained to be invisible. Her arms told a story, but no one listened. Faint burn marks ran down from her shoulders to her wrists, half covered by long sleeves in summer heat. One jagged scar curved just beneath her jawline like a cruel signature of a past no one cared about. What they didn't know, what they never thought to ask, was that every one of those scars was earned in service, not in shame. Keisha served in a classified medical unit during the Afghanistan conflict. She was a combat field medic, one of the few women and one of even fewer black soldiers in her division. She was strong, respected, and decorated. But here she was just the help, and that hurt more than any wound she ever received overseas. Sometimes she'd glance at the clock and count the hours left in her shift. Other times, her eyes would drift to the window, the world outside, always moving, always forgetting. She had learned to live with the silence, to hide the tattoo on her arm, the one symbol that connected her to a time when she mattered, a time when people had saluted her, not laughed behind her back. The tattoo was a mark of honor, an emblem of Task Force Iron Eagle, a unit known for high-risk, high-skill rescue ops. It was inked on her forearm during her third deployment, faded now, partially burned like everything else that day. She stopped. Trying to explain herself a long time ago, no one listened. When she applied for jobs after coming home, employers saw the marks and made assumptions. When she told them she was a vet, they looked surprised, then uncomfortable. Eventually, she stopped mentioning it. The world didn't want to hear about a black woman who had been a hero. It was easier for them to see her as broken, strange, or forgettable, so she gave them what they wanted: silence. Until one Thursday afternoon changed everything. The bell above the diner door rang, just like it always did. But this time, the man who walked in wasn't a regular. He wasn't loud or judgmental. He moved with a limp and wore an old military jacket, the kind with patches that meant something. He didn't sit right away. He stood by the door looking at her, really looking at her, and then his eyes locked on her arm. Not her scars, not her skin, but the faint, faded edge of her tattoo. His breath caught, his hands trembled. And in a voice roughened by age and memory, he said, "Ma'am, where did you get that ink?" The diner went silent. Forks paused midair. Conversations froze. Keisha didn't move. For a moment, it felt like the past had finally caught up to the present. And for the first time in years, someone saw her. The silence in the diner felt heavier than the rain tapping on the windows. Outside, forks hovered in midair. Even the kitchen door stopped swinging. Every eye was now on Keisha and the older man by the entrance. He slowly stepped forward, eyes still fixed on her arm. "That tattoo," he repeated, voice lower now, almost reverent. "That's from Task Force Iron Eagle, isn't it?" Keisha's breath caught. She instinctively pulled her sleeve down, trying to hide it, but it was too late. "Where'd you serve?" The man asked gently. "Was it Sand Ridge? Kandahar? You were—" You were there, weren't you? Her lips parted, but no sound came out. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not here, not in a place where people didn't want her stories, just their sweet tea refilled. She took a step back. Her eyes darted toward the manager at the counter, already frowning, as if expecting drama. The man didn't budge. He looked like he was staring at someone he hadn't seen in a lifetime. I was in the 3rd unit rotation, he said. Recon and support. I knew every medic assigned to us. There weren't many of you. And only one had that tattoo. Keisha finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. Sergeant Dixon gave it to me a week before the convoy attack. We lost 8 men that day. The old veteran's face went pale. Dixon, he whispered. My God, I thought he died alone. No, she said. Her eyes glassed over. I was there. I stayed. With him. She slowly pushed up her sleeve, revealing the full tattoo symbol still clinging to life beneath the scarred skin. I held his hand until his last breath, she added, voice shaking. And then I crawled back through flames to get the rest of the wounded. The man's hand covered his mouth as tears filled his eyes. I thought you were gone. They said no medics made it out of that ambush. I barely did, she replied. Woke up 3 weeks later in a German hospital. My file was marked as presumed dead for 2 days before the system caught up. A long silence followed. Then the man stood taller, and what he did next made the entire diner stop breathing. He raised his right hand and saluted. Not a casual nod, not a polite gesture. A crisp, respectful military salute. To Sergeant Keisha Barnes, he said. Loud enough for every single person to hear. A damn hero. Gasps echoed, silverware clinked against porcelain. Keisha's eyes widened. She hadn't heard her rank said aloud in years. People at the booths shifted uncomfortably. One woman who had sneered at her just that morning now stared at the floor. For once, no one saw a waitress. They saw a soldier. And in that single moment, her scars didn't look like flaws anymore. They looked like battles survived. Like proof she had once walked through hell and returned with others on her back. The diner slowly returned to motion, but the atmosphere had changed. Something sacred had happened in front of their eyes, and no one knew quite what to say. The veteran introduced himself, Corporal Eugene Walker, retired Army Ranger, 2 tours, 2 gunshot wounds, 1 steel rod in his leg. He motioned to the booth near the back, the quiet one by the window. Would you sit with me, Sergeant? He asked. Keisha hesitated, then nodded. They sat across from each other. The table between them felt like a bridge between 2 worlds. His weathered hands holding a coffee cup, her fingers nervously tracing the edge of a napkin. For the first time in a long time, someone looked her in the eyes and actually wanted to hear her story. Tell me, Eugene said, what really happened that day? Keisha took a deep breath. Our convoy was headed to a refugee checkpoint. Outside Helmand, it was supposed to be routine, but we hit an IED buried under the main road. First truck went up like fireworks. Flames everywhere, screams I didn't think, I just ran in. Her voice began to tremble. I dragged 2 men out before the second explosion hit. That's when the fire got me. My gear melted onto my skin. But I didn't stop. I had to get to Sergeant Dixon. He was pinned. Eugene nodded solemnly. I remember that op. Heard it was a slaughterhouse. It was, she whispered. I held Dixon until the medevac came, but I was unconscious. By the time they landed, I woke up in Germany, wrapped head to toe like a mummy, and then nothing, no ceremony, no flags. Just a discharge letter, a ruined body, and a world that didn't want to know. Her fingers brushed over the tattoo, what remained of it. It had once been sharp and proud. Now it looked like it had fought to survive, just like her. They told me I could apply for support, but I couldn't find steady work. Everyone kept staring. No one cared about my uniform. They just saw this, she pointed to the scars, and assumed I was dangerous or damaged. Eugene's hands clenched. You're not damaged, you're decorated. Keisha gave a sad smile. Try telling that to the people who tip with. Loose change and leave me Bible verses instead of respect. He shook his head. This country's got a short memory. Yeah, she said, unless you come back in a parade. I didn't get a parade. I got a coffee pot and customers who think I'm weird. But for the first time, she didn't sound bitter. She sounded free, like speaking the truth had loosened something inside her. Eugene leaned in. You didn't just survive that? Blast, you carried others out. You gave Dixon peace in his last seconds. That's more than most soldiers ever do. Keisha looked down. Funny, she said softly. I used to wonder if I even mattered. But today, someone remembered. And in that booth by the window, under a flickering neon sign, the truth she'd buried for years finally found the light. By the next morning, something in the diner felt different. The usual silence around Keisha was gone. It had been replaced with murmurs of curiosity and a bit of guilt. The regulars, those who once mocked her or avoided her eyes now, couldn't stop glancing her way. And then, just after the lunch rush, the bell above the door rang again. Corporal Eugene Walker walked in, but this time he wasn't alone. Behind him were two more veterans, each in clean-pressed service jackets. One wore a Bronze Star. The other had a cane but stood proudly. They didn't even look at the menu. They came for her. Ma'am, the Bronze Star veteran said, removing his cap, I served with your old CO, Sergeant Dixon. He used to talk about a medic who ran into fire like she was made of steel. Keisha blinked. He talked about me? All the time, the man smiled. Said you were tougher than half the men in the squad and twice as brave? Something cracked open in her chest, something long buried under ash and silence. From that day on, the booth by the window was never empty. Veterans came, men and women, old and young. Some had uniforms. Others had dog tags tucked under their shirts, but all came to sit with Keisha, to thank her. To honor her, then came the news crew. Eugene, quiet but determined, had contacted a local journalist who covered veteran stories. He didn't need much to convince her. Within a week, the headline aired on local TV and exploded online. Waitress mocked for her scars turns out to be a decorated combat medic. Black female veteran recognized after years of silence. Suddenly, Keisha wasn't just that girl in the diner. She was a hero hiding in plain sight. The town reacted like it had woken up from a long sleep. People began leaving real tips, $20, $50, even thank you notes scribbled on napkins. A teenage girl brought her flowers and asked to interview her for a school project. The diner's owner, who had never once asked about her past, called her into the office one morning and stammered, We should have known. I'm sorry. Keisha didn't want pity. She wanted dignity. And now she was getting it. A week later, someone mounted a framed photo of her in uniform on the wall just above the cash register. It was taken during her first deployment. Helmet on, eyes sharp, the unit emblem visible on her sleeve. Next to it, a plaque read, In honor of Sergeant Keisha Barnes, combat medic, survivor, hero. For the first time in years, Keisha stood tall when she walked across the floor. She didn't hide her scars. She rolled up her sleeves. And when customers looked at her, they didn't see something broken anymore. They saw someone who never stopped fighting. Someone who had saved lives in silence. Until the world finally stopped to listen. Months passed. But Keisha's booth by the window remained a gathering place, no longer a quiet corner, but a space of stories, healing, and remembrance. What began with a tattoo had turned into something far greater. She started a weekly tradition called Veterans and Voices. Every Thursday night, soldiers from every era came to Melvin's diner. They sat together, swapped stories, laughed, cried, and most importantly felt seen. And Keisha? She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She became a pillar in the town, a symbol of resilience, a mentor, a local hero. High school kids began stopping by with notebooks. College students came to interview her for veterans' history projects. Local leaders asked her to speak at city events, even Memorial Day ceremonies. And every time someone tried to call her ma'am or miss, she'd smile gently and correct them. That's Sergeant Barnes to you. But she wasn't arrogant. She remained humble, still pouring coffee, still helping clean after. Hours, what changed wasn't her heart, but the way the world finally valued it. And every Thursday, right on time, Corporal Eugene Walker would walk in, limping a little more than before, but always standing tall. "Afternoon, Doc," he'd greet her. She'd chuckle. "Afternoon, Corporal." It became their ritual. A small reminder that time, respect, and courage still meant something. 1. Evening, as the sun spilled golden light through the diner windows, a little boy wandered in with his mother. He had wide eyes and a soft voice. He stared at Keisha's arms, her sleeves rolled up as always and pointed. "Did those hurt?" he asked. Keisha knelt down beside him. Her face was kind, calm, and proud. "They used to," she said softly. "But now, they remind me I was strong enough to protect people. And that makes them beautiful." The boy blinked, then smiled. "You're like a real superhero." Keisha laughed. "No cape," she said, "but I'll take it." Behind the counter, her framed military photo gleamed under a small spotlight. Her scars caught the same glow, and for once, they didn't look out of place. They looked like badges of honor. And perhaps the greatest change of all? The town itself. It began to treat every veteran with more care, more respect. People began asking real questions, listening, learning, because one woman's scars had reminded them that heroism doesn't always wear medals out loud. Sometimes it wears aprons. Sometimes it serves coffee. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, until the world is ready to see it. And it all started with one tattoo, one voice that refused to stay silent, and one man who remembered what others chose to forget. In a world quick to judge and slow to listen, one woman's scars told a story. No one bothered to hear until one man stopped and remembered she didn't need a medal to prove her worth. She didn't need applause to validate her courage. All she needed was for someone to truly see her. Sergeant Keisha Barnes walked through fire, saved lives, and returned home only to be forgotten. But she chose grace over bitterness, strength over silence. And now her story speaks for those who can't, to the heroes who serve in silence. To the warriors behind the aprons, the scars, and the everyday uniforms, this story is for you. Share it, honor it. Never let the world forget that sometimes the greatest battles are fought long after the war is over. She served her country. She saved lives. But when she came home, all they saw were her scars. In this powerful, true-to-life story, Keisha Barnes, a quiet black waitress in a small town, hides a past no one cares to know until a fellow veteran walks into the diner and recognizes a faded military tattoo beneath her scars. What happens? Next will leave the entire town and you speechless. This is not just a story about war. It's a story about dignity, resilience, and the unseen battles our heroes face long after the fighting ends. If you've ever judged someone by how they look, if you've ever felt forgotten or overlooked, or if you believe in honoring real-life heroes, this story is for you. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional, inspiring, and powerful human stories that reveal the truth behind everyday faces.